Looking at the geography of the country, Mr. Ignatieff is well positioned to improve Liberal fortunes in Quebec, given his long-standing recognition of the Quebecois as an ethnic nation, as well as his strong command of the French language. However, he is at a step with most Quebecers on the war in Afghanistan, so this could become a sticking point for him. He will likely not lose support to Conservatives, given their support for the war, as well as their recent fanning of the flames of sovereignty. Thus, Mr. Ignatieff's main opponent will be the Bloc. He will have to go beyond just recognizing the Quebecois as a nation and demonstrate to the Quebecers that they are best served by a Liberal government, not Bloc representation. It has been known for a long time that the Liberals are well represented in Canada's major metropolitans. However, the Liberals are seeing support erode in one of their traditional bases of support, recent immigrants and ethnic groups. This is especially apparent in the sprawling suburbs around Toronto. The Conservatives have made a decided and noticeable push for these demographics, and with considerable success. To win these citizens back, Mr. Ignatieff will need to reaffirm that the Liberals are the party of Canadian values, that Mr. Ignatieff and the party stands for a society that is free and just, socially concerned for the well-being of citizens and the environment, and establishes an economy that ensures prosperity for all Canadians. This messaging will reach out to recent immigrants because these are many of the values which attracted them to Canada in the first place. Additionally, it will reach out to a broad spectrum of Canadians who generally hold these beliefs. Another strategic challenge for Mr. Ignatieff is the lack of a Liberal presence in rural ridings. The messaging I just talked about will no doubt go towards improving Liberal numbers in rural ridings, but this alone will not be good enough. The Liberal Party can hardly claim to be a truly national party without significant representation from rural ridings. This does not necessarily mean that the Liberals must make enormous breakthroughs in traditionally conservative rural ridings such as those in Alberta. Rather, it means showing rural communities that Mr. Ignatieff and the Liberal Party are strongly committed to their interests. In fact, you need look no further than Ontario to see a region where Liberal support in rural ridings has virtually evaporated. In my region of southwestern Ontario, there are only 2 Liberal MPs. Developing a policy platform that appeals to rural interests such as global competitiveness, the environment, and commodity prices will be key for making inroads in these ridings. While all these considerations are important, they will likely be secondary to what will probably be the #1 issue in the next election, the economy. And the focus will be set primarily on the leaders. Both Mr. Ignatieff and Mr. Harper are strong leaders, and that they are intelligent, relatively successful strategists, command respect, and are decisive. Ultimately, it will come down to confidence. Despite his perceived image as being on the right of the Liberal Party, Mr. Ignatieff has always been a proponent of the role of government. He openly states that he is pro-business and pro-markets, but is equally open to stating that government has an active job to play in ensuring economic and social prosperity for all Canadians. This is the primary area where he must differentiate himself from Mr. Harper. He will have to project himself as having long been a proponent of economic stimulus, while Mr. Harper instead decided to sit on his hands. While Mr. Ignatieff wanted to be proactive, Mr. Harper chose to be reactive, letting the economy slide into recession. And though the campaign will focus on the leaders, Mr. Ignatieff should not hesitate to use the strength of his front bench, especially when it comes to economic matters. There was uncertainty in the last election as to who the real leader was when Mr. Ignatieff and Mr. Ray campaigned with Mr. Dion. But that was because of Mr. Dion's perceived leadership weaknesses. If Mr. Ignatieff can unite his caucus and achieve caucus cohesion before the next election, he will avoid these problems that plagued Mr. Dion. This time, there will be no doubt as to who the top dog is, even if Mr. Ignatieff chooses to use Liberal economic heavyweights Scott Bryson and John McCallum frequently. Instead of projecting disunity, this will likely project the strength of the Liberal team. Mentioning the team is the right message for the Liberals, but the last time they just had the wrong leader to do it with. The Liberal campaign will certainly be centered on Mr. Ignatieff, but it should not be all about Mr. Ignatieff. This will be contrasted with Mr. Harper's centralized dominance of his caucus, which many Canadians are averse to.